Hi, welcome back to my channel. This is week 3 of Satya. Satya is the Sanskrit word for truthfulness, and that is the Yama the last few videos have been based on. So this is week 3. So we have week 3 and week 4 coming. Following along in the Yamas and Niyamas, Exploring Yoga's Ethical Practice book by Deborah Adele. I have an intro video up if you're curious as to what we're doing here. If you're following along, great. If not, and you're just here for the ride, awesome. Let's go. So in week 3, we're talking about what the cost of belonging is. Under this beautiful Yama of truthfulness, which so directly goes hand in hand with nonviolence. We're talking about what the true cost of being truthful is and doing it right the first time in this video. And then we'll talk about the week 3 practice that shows up at the end of this Yama as it's stated in the book. But if not, this is always work you can do on your own if you're not following along in the book. But I suggest you do because it's a good one and it inspired me to put this video series together. So what is the cost of belonging? So this section of Satya starts off talking about Deborah Adele explores the work of Bert Hellinger. So Bert Hellinger created a work study called Family Constellation. And within that study, families and the dynamics are explored as to how they directly affect an individual person's innocence and guilt, and when and how they kind of experience that. So Hellinger suggests that as long as what the idea is and what his study has found is that as long as we stay within the confines of the familial unit, which really this is, when you think about it, is ingrained in us from the time that we're born. We're all raised within a family of some sort, our pack, our clan, our tribe, however you want to reference that. And it starts from the time that we're born, where we experience the innocence of belonging as long as we know and we learn how to go along with the group and with what the greater thought processes are. And then he also explores in his work what starts to happen when someone within that group, family, thinks differently than everyone else. What is the cost of that freedom, and how much guilt does our individuality carry with it? So this is really, really interesting work. I actually worked with a practitioner a few years ago in Sedona, Arizona, who does this family constellation work. And, you know, I have to be honest, in the time, which it was only like a 2-hour session that I was with this person, I have to say, personally for me, and I've heard different stories from different people that they've done this family constellation work and it was amazing for them and so enlightening. For me, I did not get a ton out of it. And maybe it's just because I only did that like 2-hour little like snippet, which it wasn't an intro or anything. It was actually supposed to be considered like a treatment, like work. But what I individually got out of that wasn't necessarily groundbreaking for me, because I had spent many years of my life kind of analyzing my family, the roles we all have within our families, what my individual role within my family was, and kind of how I was the one that really thought differently about most things. I think growing up, we look at our families and we look at ourselves and we just dive into who am I, and like that's what we're asking ourselves, when in reality, how we think, how we respond, and what we do is truly what defines who we are. And that shouldn't look exactly the same as everyone else within our family, group, or tribe. So I think this work is very interesting. Maybe I didn't delve deep enough into it. I think I am a lot more of an introspective person, and I know not a lot of people are that way. So maybe going and having like one session, it's like groundbreaking for them. But overall, Bert Hellinger is fascinating. This work, family constellation work, is fascinating. And it really directly ties into our truthfulness and our truthful nature, because this is how we learn. What is the cost for us? What's the cost for us when we go against the grain and we think differently? And when we think about these people, we think about the people in our lives, or even if we think about our families, consider the black sheep in the family, the black sheep. And I say that, I love an air quote if you didn't get that from my last video. Very rarely is the black sheep ever truly the black sheep of the family. The black sheep is the one that's just different from everyone else. But what is so wrong with that? Like, when a family is so quick to label someone a black sheep, are they a black sheep because they don't think the way you do? Does that make it wrong? Is being a black sheep wrong as compared to a white sheep? They're all just sheep. I don't know one person that, and I have many in my life, family, friends, that would consider themselves black sheep of their families. They're just the outliers. They're usually just the ones that think differently, that do things just a little bit differently than everybody else. I don't know one person that would identify as the black sheep in their family that's like ever knocked over a liquor store or anything like that. With this idea that it's this person that's just like this outlaw, when in reality, they're only an outlaw to you if they're within your family. So what's the cost for that person? And it's something to consider. And I think as we grow into our truthfulness, this is really what this chapter and this section explores. The writer, so Deborah Adele, she goes into talking about her time with feminism and how she found refuge in understanding feminism and the group labeling herself as a feminist, how it really directly went against the grain of how her parents felt about things, specifically her mother, how they really couldn't see eye to eye on this one topic, and how it was something that was very, very uncomfortable for her mother to talk about. So as she got older and they would try to address this topic, they just didn't see eye to eye on it, so much so that this became painful for her mother. And it became something that really just got in the way of them just having a relationship that's just kittens and rainbows and no obstacles, and that really ultimately is not a truthful relationship. So at least just because you have a kid doesn't mean you're gonna grow up to necessarily like your child. The person who that person grows up and grows into being may be different than what you thought they would be, but that's where our individuality and that's where our truth comes in. And that's where really the true test of unconditional love comes in, because children grow up to be adults, and that doesn't necessarily mean we're always going to agree with them and their thought processes, or that they're going to agree with us and ours. So the cost for the writer, for Deborah Adele, in leaning into something like feminism that made her mother directly so uncomfortable, is her just simply living her truth, and she's comfortable with that. But her truth causes a bit of discomfort for her mom. And when we think about, as people, all the groups, we're born into families, but we are members of the country that we live in, depending on our gender, depending on our race, depending on our class, our origin, our nationalities. We're all a part of groups within a community, whether we're active at our yoga studios, and that's a community, or at our local YMCA, or whatever it is. We're all a part of groups in some capacity. And a huge one that taps into this, that's a perfect example, and maybe I'll use that one, is religious groups. Almost all of us have been raised within some context of organized religion. And all of those things are okay. I myself am a member of a church. I was baptized into the LDS church last year, and I love the church. I love its teachings. But one of the first things that I noticed initially was that there's teachings and beliefs and understandings of things and thought processes, and then there's culture. And there's culture almost within every single one of these groups, not just church. I use that as a broad example because most of us have been raised in a church of some sort, where maybe the way we think about things isn't always necessarily accepted by the greater good or the vast majority. When we consider Christianity in America, you would think that there were no other topics that exist on the planet other than Second Amendment rights and abortion rights and keeping gay marriage illegal. But there are a million other issues that directly affect people that identify as Christians. But we build these stereotypes around these individual groups, and sometimes these stereotypes are the ones that people within the groups themselves start to believe. So when someone comes in and they think differently, or they have a thought process, an opinion, an idea that directly challenges us and ours, that person is not like us. They typically don't fit in easily, which I've never been one, right here, never been one to fit in easily anywhere. But that all goes without saying. That's what makes us individuals. And that's what makes our truth our truth. And yes, it's going to agitate some people, but it's our truth. So she goes on to talk about this in this section of Satya, and I will share these couple of lines with you from this section, which I thought were pretty profound. As long as these rules don't conflict with our inner longing to grow more and more into our full self, there is no problem. So being a member of a group of any kind, an organization of any kind, a member of your family, there's nothing wrong with any of that. And being a member of your family is just whether you believe you choose that or not. We all hold different beliefs around that. But you kind of can't avoid that. You're a member of your family, and that's the way that it is. What you do and how you spend your time, and the best way I was able to break this down, kind of rationalize this for myself. There's nothing wrong with being a member of a church. There's nothing wrong with being a member of an organized religion. And for some reason, and I understand the reasons why, and it's another video for another time. I say that a lot as I'm going through. But again, as I've mentioned several times in almost every video, these Yamas and Niyamas are complex, which is what makes them so beautiful. It's really what you're doing and how you're spending your time and who you're putting yourself around. That will directly dictate whether or not you're growing or you're staying stagnant. Just because, and you could be a Buddhist. If you're a Buddhist, you're a member of an organized religion. So for some reason in our country, so many of us that maybe denounce religion or organized religion, or we stay away from it, it's always Christianity that seems to get like the bad rap. And I kind of understand why. Us Christians, we're not always liked, and I understand the reasons why. But even there are probably someone that will see this video and say, she's a member of the LDS Church, she's a Christian. I consider myself a follower of Christ, by the way. However, she does yoga and she's studying the Yamas and the Niyamas. She's her belief systems conflict. They don't at all. Most of this can be found in the Ten Commandments and in the Bible and in the scriptures. So it doesn't conflict at all. But people are so quick to do that. It's like someone can't be complex and have layers to them without it jarring someone, because we love being able to shove someone in a box. We freak out when we can't throw a label on someone, and it's such a problem, but it's not your problem. That's someone else's problem. That's not my problem. It's someone else's problem that's pretty much directly judging me without knowing me or asking me. And that I don't get any time for that. And sometimes it's difficult, but it's also with people within our families. If someone doesn't have to accept what you believe, someone doesn't have to accept what you do or how you do it to love you and support you through it. That's not hard. But if you're in a situation where your family's making that hard for you, and you're not 15 and you don't have any other choice other than to be at home with your family in the house you grew up in. You know, a day's gonna come when things will get easier and you'll grow into an adult and you get to make choices about where you place the majority of your time and who you put that energy into. And listen, families are important, families matter, and the people within our families absolutely matter, but they do not dictate directly who you are and what your thought processes are and what your belief system should be. And if you are finding that you're in this situation where the beliefs of others are directly hindering you and your personal growth in any area of your life, you have to decide where you're going to put your energy. Is it going to be into you, your dreams, your hopes, your goals? Or are you going to continue to put yourself around people that maybe are not supportive? And that's a hard thing. That can be a really, really hard thing. But you have to explore that if you're trying to evolve as a human being. If you're people pleasing, that's a huge one. Gross. No people pleasing. Be honest and truthful, and this is kind of segueing us into the next section here, which I'll read this before I get into that. This is from excerpt from the book. Truth rarely seems to ask the easier choice of us. In the moment-to-moment details of our daily living, truth asks us to pay attention and to act correctly the first time. So this is segueing just into doing it right the first time. And what doing it right the first time doesn't have room for is people pleasing. Is, I don't really want to go out, but I'm going to say, oh, sure, I'll commit. Yeah, I'll be there. And then bail out at the last minute. And then now you're feeling bad. And maybe you've let someone down and you're avoiding them like the plague because now you know you have to reach out to them and have a conversation. If you were just honest from the get-go and said, I can't make it, or I'm actually going to be really busy that week and I need my Saturday for myself, being honest and truthful, you never have to go backwards and get yourself out of a bind. You never have to step back and deal with these little pockets of chaos that you end up creating because you involve other people instead of just sticking true to yourself and saying, you know, I truly don't feel like that. Now listen, it happens sometimes. You know, the point is that when we're just able to be honest and to just be honest from the beginning, really in every area of our life. Like, can you imagine doing that at work and just, if we were always just honest and honest within compassion, which is something that I'll talk about in the next video, but being truthful and honest about how you think and how you feel about things, or what your true honest opinion is, without directly feeling as though you're going to offend someone. Like letting go of that fear, letting go of the concern or the guilt about not going along with everyone else. That was a huge lesson for me in my life that I had to learn, that I learned relatively young, that I don't necessarily go along with what everyone else is doing, and I don't necessarily think what everyone else thinks, but I always offer up my opinion because I like to think that it makes someone else in the room feel a little bit more accepted. Or I often find I'm not alone and just I'm the one that's just been brave enough to open my mouth and say something. So with that, it's a good place to stop for this video. Week 3 activity. This week, pay attention and go slow enough that you do it right the first time. Make this week where you don't have to backtrack to apologize or correct mistakes, and where you don't run from any hard tasks that present themselves. Face each moment head on with clarity and courage. And that's a tough thing to do, which is why I love these activities, because it gives you time for self-reflection. And it's when those moments arise that you might find that you're thinking something, and then we do this thing where we overanalyze what we're thinking, what we're saying. We read the room. This can be done in any environment. You read the room and you think, I don't know that my opinion is like it, or it's going to be going along with what everyone else thinks. And take a moment to think about that. You know, and it might be something as simple as, are you committing to something that you really don't want to commit to for this week? Are you being honest and truthful for yourself? What does it feel like? And is it an act of compassion to yourself to tell the truth or decline? So with that, this is where I'll leave you. I hope that you're doing well. If you haven't taken a moment today, thank God just for being alive, and take a deep breath and just show gratitude. Please take a moment and do that now. Until next time.